I'm Sumi Somaskanda. It's good to have you with us today. A warm welcome to our program here live at the White House, where President Trump is in the White House at the moment, meeting with Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He arrived a little bit earlier. Let's take a look at the moment when the President and the Crown Prince did meet here. In the last half an hour or so, there you see the warm welcome, President Trump standing side by side with Mohammed bin Salman. It is his first visit to the White House in 7 years. Significantly, the first since the killing of Saudi critic Jamal Khashoggi. That sparked global outrage. Now, the visit is part of a long-planned trip to follow up on investment announcement pledges made by the Saudi Crown Prince when President Trump visited Riyadh back in May. There will be a White House investment summit held with the Saudis tomorrow. And Mr. Trump is seeking to cash in on a $600 billion Saudi investment pledge. As we said, that was made in May during his visit. Now, we're expecting a discussion as well on AI technology and nuclear civilian defense technology. We're expecting also a black tie dinner with the likes of Elon Musk attending, the richest man in the world, and of course, once a close ally of the president. Let's bring in our White House correspondent, Baron de Busman, who's following this visit for us. Bring us up to date on where we are. We saw the Crown Prince arrive, he and the president in the White House, and we understand that the press is starting to gather. So that might mean that we will soon get an image of these two men together.
We're very likely to get an image of them together in the Oval Office any minute now. Yeah. The arrival, I think, was unusual in that there was much more pomp and circumstances is usually the case for a working visit, especially by someone who's not actually Saudi Arabia's head of state. There was cannons, and we saw a flyover by F-35 and F-16 jets, which I think just shows the extent to which the Crown Prince's image has been rehabilitated in Washington in the years since Jamal Khashoggi's murder in Turkey.
Absolutely. And there we're looking at those images. We saw that flyover and the cannon salute and President Trump standing with the Crown Prince here. There are many issues on the agenda, but some real key ones that we're expecting the two men to discuss. Take us through what we're expecting today.
Well, there'll certainly be a discussion over investment, as you mentioned. That's something that the Trump administration and the Saudis are very keen to discuss today, as well as the possibility of kind of a security umbrella with U.S. guarantees over Saudi Arabia, as is the case with Qatar next door. There's also the pending sale of F-35 jets, which are somewhat controversial in that
which flew above us.
Which flew above us.
Yeah.
3 of the 6 were F-35s. And it's certainly a controversial move. There's been concern that that technology could fall into foreign hands or that it would upset Israel's military edge in the Middle East as things stand now. But I think that perhaps most contentious is Trump's desire for Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords and normalize relations with Israel. The Saudis have expressed an interest, but said they would like to see Israel recognize a Palestinian state, which the current Israeli government of Benjamin Netanyahu has no appetite for.
We're just looking at these images, Baron, of when the Crown Prince and the President were walking along the Presidential Walk of Fame, where you have the portraits, the gold portraits of past presidents. And it appears they stopped in front of the President Biden auto pen. So instead of President Biden, it is his auto pen signature. What did you make of that?
Well, I think for one, it's just part of these renovations that President Trump is very keen to show foreign visitors here. But I think also there's kind of a subtle message there. The Biden administration had a particularly difficult relationship with the Saudis, and at one point Biden even kind of expressed a wish that Saudi Arabia would become a pariah in the world. And I think that's certainly something that the Trump administration has reversed, as shown by today's visit, and I would imagine that's a point of discussion between the Crown Prince and the President today.
It appears they do have a close and warm relationship as well.
They do. I mean, many people remember in the first Trump administration, Saudi Arabia was his first foreign stop very early on. And he did, of course, visit Saudi Arabia earlier this year. I think economically, militarily, and diplomatically, Saudi Arabia is really a key partner for the U.S. in the Middle East. And that's all reflected by the circumstances of today's visit.
Take us through as we're waiting for the press available. Oh, here we see, I think they're seated together. Let's see if we can listen in. Oh, okay. All right. These are not live images. Apologies. Okay, here we see the visit that President Trump paid to Riyadh a little bit earlier. We are waiting, though, for those images from inside the White House. But take us through what we're going to see for the rest of the day, because there is this black tie dinner. It's not a state dinner, but it is expected to be attended by some very prominent figures.
I think this dinner that we'll see tonight in the East Room of the White House will certainly have a big representation of American industry and American technology firms that have a vested interest in the economic ties between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia. But also, I mean, it's as close to one can get to a state visit without actually being a state visit. I just think that shows how important Mohammed bin Salman's relationship with Trump is to the Trump White House and the importance of those U.S.-Saudi ties. And of course, there's an investment forum tomorrow. So for a rather short visit, there was quite a lot packed in there, which I think shows just how keen the Trump administration is to end this visit with a result, at least economically and politically.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of that is also making sure that those investment pledges, the $600 billion made by Saudi Arabia, that translates into real figures on the ground here, to jobs and money pumped into the U.S. economy. And we could see even more investment announced, right?
We very well might see additional investments announced, as well as kind of more concrete pledges to the $600 billion that had been announced before. I think from the Trump administration's point of view, framing this visit as not just important for foreign policy, but for the U.S. economy, for job creation in the U.S., for investment in U.S. companies or opportunities for U.S. companies in Saudi Arabia, that would very much be the best result that the White House can hope for.
Okay. So certainly a lot to keep an eye on here at the White House. Baron, we'll let you go as we await those pictures from inside the White House of the two men meeting. We'll bring you back to talk to you about that in a little bit. And we are here keeping our eye on any live pictures coming into us from inside the White House. For now, though, we're going to move on to the other big story of this hour here in Washington, which is the survivors of abuse by Jeffrey Epstein. They've been joined by politicians outside the U.S. Capitol. They held a press conference a little bit earlier in the day. This is just ahead of a vote on the release of the official files on the late sex offender. The Republican Congresswoman, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's been pushing for the release of these files and for them to be made public, said that the victims would never give up. Now, the House of Representatives is expected to approve a measure that would compel the U.S. Department of Justice to release the evidence gathered during the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. President Trump dropped his opposition to the move, saying there is nothing to hide. That was something we saw in a post he made over the weekend. Now, Sky Roberts, who is Virginia Giuffre's brother, thanked the U.S. representatives before delivering an emotional speech. And Virginia Giuffre, of course, one of Jeffrey Epstein's accusers. Take a listen.
Epstein and Maxwell didn't just abuse her. They trafficked her to a network of the rich and powerful. Princes, prime ministers, politicians, financiers, and lawyers. These men committed unspeakable acts against her will, and against the will of countless survivors who stand united with us today. Virginia's strength was tested in many ways that most of us can hardly imagine. She was manipulated, coerced, and threatened, forced into complicity in her own devastation. She often spoke of psychological scars that ran deeper than the physical ones. From the start, she wrote, "They manipulated me into participating in behaviors that ate away at me, eroding my ability to comprehend reality and preventing me from defending myself. The most destructive wound they inflicted was that of forced complicity, a betrayal of self that was crafted by her abusers. But I stand here today to declare that their tactics of fear and intimidation did not work. Virginia's spirit could not be broken. She became a beacon of hope, a warrior, fighting not just for herself, but for every survivor who suffered in silence."
A reminder that that was the brother of Virginia Giuffre, who was one of Jeffrey Epstein, the late sex offender's accusers. She also had said that she was forced to have sex with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly Prince Andrew, something the prince has denied, and her posthumous memoirs were released a little bit earlier this month. Her family very much sees this as an opportunity for justice, and as you heard, that emotional appeal from her brother there. Now, the Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene was among those who were gathered at the Capitol a little bit earlier. She had been called a traitor by President Trump for her position on making sure that these files related to Jeffrey Epstein were released. She reiterated her calls for the release of all of the files, any documentation, and she spoke about challenging the president on this issue.
These women have fought the most horrific fight that no woman should have to fight, and they did it by banding together and never giving up. And that's what we did by fighting so hard against the most powerful people in the world, even the President of the United States, in order to make this vote happen today. I was called a traitor by a man that I fought for 6 years for. And I gave him my loyalty for free. I won my first election without his endorsement, beating 8 men in a primary. And I've never owed him anything, but I fought for him for the policies and for America first. And he called me a traitor for standing with these women and refusing to take my name off the discharge petition. Let me tell you what a traitor is. A traitor is an American that serves foreign countries and themselves. A patriot is an American that serves the United States of America and Americans like the women standing behind me.
That was Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was speaking at the Capitol a little bit earlier, and she referred to a very public break with President Trump. Indeed, just last week, President Trump was asked about Marjorie Taylor Greene. He said she had lost her way. He didn't know what had happened to her. And then over the weekend, we saw him unleash a number of posts criticizing Marjorie Taylor Greene, saying she was a traitor, which we heard her reference in her speech a little bit earlier at the Capitol. And she was once a very staunch supporter of the president. And she says that she still supports him as president and is happy that he has changed his mind on ensuring that these files are released. Now, elsewhere in the U.S. Capitol today, we saw House Republicans speaking. They have long been against a vote on the Epstein files. The House Speaker, Mike Johnson, spoke to press a little bit earlier. He's the most powerful lawmaker in the House, and he accused Democrats of forcing what he called a political show vote.
The truth is simple and straightforward and obvious for anyone who is willing to look at it objectively. Clearly, this is a political exercise for Democrats and a few others, sadly, and it is as deceitful and dishonest as their pointless stunt to shut down the government. Same ideology behind this. Democrats are trying to use the Epstein matter as a political weapon to distract from their own party's failures. And in a desperate attempt, they're trying to somehow tie President Trump to the scandal. President Trump has nothing to do with it. He has said himself he has nothing to hide. And that's clearly what they've been trying to do. They're trying to attack President Trump. This is what they've done. They weaponized the justice system over the last several years to go after him, and this is their latest attempt.
Not much shelf life on those, you know?
Speaker Johnson, they're accusing the Democrats of a political stunt. Many Republicans saying this is a Democrat show to ensure that President Trump is somehow damaged and that they don't actually have the fate and the interest of the survivors in mind. But the Democrats we've spoken to here on BBC News say that anybody who's implicated in the release of these files should be held to justice, whether Republican or Democrat. As we're looking at some of these images, to give you a sense of what will happen today, the House will vote on what's called the Epstein Files Transparency Act. That would force the Justice Department to make all of the files pertaining to Jeffrey Epstein publicly available. And we are expecting that vote to take place a little bit later in this afternoon. Let's bring in our correspondent, North America correspondent, Nomia Iqbal. She's at the Capitol. She's been following the latest on this for us. Nomia, take us through what we're expecting to see this afternoon and what you made of the press conference that we saw a little bit earlier today with the survivors speaking.
Well, it was an incredibly emotional and powerful press conference where you had survivors, some that we knew of, some that we didn't, really articulating the damage, the abuse, that they faced at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. And what struck me about them, all of them, was that they were very clear this is not a partisan issue, this is not Democrats, this is not Republicans, that they just want justice and closure, they want all the files released. And that was really underscored by the presence of the lawmakers, Rohana from the Democratic Party, Thomas Massie from the Republican Party, and of course Marjorie Taylor Greene from the Republican Party, who talked about how they have really fought hard to get to this point. I did ask the lawmakers, though, however, that it doesn't require legislation to actually release the files, that President Trump, as the president, could call on the Department of Justice to do that. They said they would have preferred that. It's been a very long fight, very difficult fight. Marjorie Taylor Greene has talked about the threats that she's faced for going against members of her party. But ultimately, they feel that this is a democratic way to do it. So we'll have the vote later on today by the House. It is expected to pass, but then the Senate has to decide to take it up. Republicans, of course, control the Senate. If it passes in the Senate, then it will land on Donald Trump's desk to sign, and he has said he will sign it. Now, he could veto it. I don't think politically that would probably be in his interest, certainly judging from the atmosphere here today, to do that. But there are some roadblocks still in the way before we get to that point where all the files, every single one of them, are released imminently.